The Riverland was always a place of contrasts. In the daylight, the muddy banks smelled of earth and fresh water, and the soft breeze carried peace to whoever sat by the waves. But during the rainy season, the same river turned into a monster. The waves rose high, crashing against the banks with a roar, as if they wanted to swallow everything in their path. In a small mud house near this river, a boy was born. His name was Nabi. Nabi belonged to a poor family. His father was a laborer, sometimes catching fish to sell in the bazaar, sometimes taking odd jobs in the city. His mother stayed at home, baking bread on a clay stove, washing clothes, and raising her 4 children. Nabi was the youngest, the most fragile, yet somehow the one everyone's eyes always turned to. One of Nabi's first memories was of a flood. He was barely 5 years old when the river rose in fury. The water, like a raging beast, had devoured everything in its path, sweeping away huts and granaries, trees and animals. People fled, abandoning their homes to save themselves. Only a few remained, those who, like Nabi's family, had no way out. They huddled together in their mud house, holding on to each other as the water level rose. Nabi, too scared to ask questions, clung to his mother, burying his face in her shawl. Suddenly, a strong wave hit the house. The roof caved in. Nabi found himself under a pile of wet mud and broken wood. When he looked up, he saw his mother's worried face. She was holding out her hand to him, but the current was pulling him away. Nabi screamed, his voice lost in the wind and the rain. He struggled to free himself from the mud, but it was no use. He was too weak. Just when he thought he would drown, he felt a strong hand grab his shirt and pull him out of the water. It was his father. Without wasting a moment, he carried Nabi to safety and laid him down on a piece of dry land. Nabi, shivering and scared, looked back to see his mother being swept away by the current. His father, seeing the look on his son's face, understood what had happened. He, too, was pulled in the direction his wife had disappeared. Nabi screamed again, this time in protest, as he watched his father disappear into the raging waters. Nabi never saw his parents again. He was taken in by a kind woman who lived a little farther from the river, someone who, despite having lost her own son to the river a few years back, still had the courage to help those in need. She became Nabi's mother, and Nabi, though forever changed by the loss of his parents, learned to live again. The waves broke through the walls of their house, washing away everything. His mother screamed, clutching the children, while his father lifted them on his shoulders and ran towards higher ground. That day, Nabi understood something for the first time. Human beings are helpless when the river is angry. After the flood, life became even harder. They rebuilt their home from mud, but the scars of poverty ran deeper than before. Nabi's father was convinced of one thing now. The only way out for his children was education. He might not have had much schooling himself, but he knew that the river had taken everything from him, his home, his crops, his savings. But most importantly, it had taken his dignity. It had made him and his wife, once proud villagers, into desperate beggars. He didn't want this for his kids. He wanted them to have a future. He wanted them to be proud. So every morning he woke up before sunrise and ran to the river to fish. And every evening he came home with fish to trade in the market for his children's schoolbooks and supplies. Nabi hated school. To him, school felt like a prison. Sitting still, listening to the teacher's sharp voice, staring at strange letters on paper. It made no sense to him. Every morning his mother would force him to wear his tattered clothes and push him to school. But halfway down the path, Nabi would slip away to the river. One day, Nabi was playing by the river and saw a flock of birds sitting on a nearby tree. They were taking turns flying up into the sky and diving into the water to catch fish. One of the birds noticed Nabi watching and let out a loud squawk. The other birds flew away, but this one stayed, cocking its head to the side, and then it did something incredible. It dove straight into the water and came up with a fish in its beak. The bird hopped onto a rock and began pecking at the fish, tearing it to pieces. As the bird ate, Nabi approached cautiously. He wanted to grab the leftover fish, but the bird squawked again and spread its wings, making itself look bigger and scarier than it actually was. Nabi backed away slowly. Every day after that, Nabi came to the river with a piece of bread for the bird, and every day the bird would eat the bread and then share its fish with Nabi. Sometimes Nabi would sit on the bank and watch the bird dive for fish, wishing he could be as free and happy as it was. But mostly he brought his school books and tried to study. The bird would hop onto the pages, tracing the letters with its beak, and suddenly the letters didn't seem so strange anymore. The words swam before his eyes, and Nabi finally understood why his father wanted him to go to school. When he returned home, his father's anger awaited him. Slaps, beatings, scolding. Nabi's small body carried the marks of discipline. His father's words echoed in his head. Nabi, without education, a man is blind. Do you also want to end up like me, a laborer for life? Nabi would wipe his tears in silence. He couldn't understand how a pen and a notebook could ever free him from hunger, from floods, and from shame. School was no easier than home. His classmates mocked him for his torn clothes, his bare feet, his accent from the Kutcher villages. Look, the wild boy from the river is here. He doesn't even own shoes. How does he even get his reports card signed? Nabi said nothing. His fists clenched, his chest burned. But he endured. A fire slowly lit inside him, not of revenge, but of determination. He would not give them answers with words, but with results. He began by collecting discarded pieces of paper and old magazines, anything he could get his hands on. With a small knife, he cut them up and made notebooks for himself. He made covers out of cardboard boxes, filled them with pages, made holes, and stitched them together with the help of an old tattered dictionary. By the time he reached 5th grade, he had taught himself to read and write. He knew multiplication tables by heart. He could even solve algebra problems. When the teacher asked him to come to the blackboard and solve equations, Nabi did it faster and more accurately than anyone else. The students gasped. The teacher smiled. For the first time, Nabi felt a sense of belonging, of being accepted. He was praised in class. The other students slowly stopped making fun of him. Nabi continued to excel. He finished high school, then went on to college. After graduating, he got a job in his father's village. The irony was not lost on him. He was now the one in power, the one who could make a difference. The son of a laborer who could barely sign his name had become an engineer. Whenever Nabi saw children playing by the river, he would ask them, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" They would reply, "An engineer, sir," and Nabi would smile, knowing that their dreams were just a step away. This story is from an upcoming book. The author would like to dedicate this story to all the children who are living in poverty and to those who are trying to make a difference in their lives. If you liked this story, please stay tuned for more such stories. Thank you. One day, a teacher came to visit Nabi's house. He told his mother, "Your son is sharp. If he studies hard, he could become someone great. Guide him, or else he'll spend his life counting stones by the river." Those words struck Nabi's heart like a stone skipping across the water. For the first time, he felt that maybe books weren't just about pain and humiliation. Maybe they were keys to doors he had never seen. From that day forward, Nabi began to change. The river was still his first love, its song a constant temptation. But another voice had begun to whisper inside him, urging him to stay on the path, to keep learning. It was a small, quiet voice at first, but it grew stronger with each passing day. If you learn, it said, the river will not drown you. If you learn, you can write your own destiny. This inner voice became Nabi's secret weapon against the river. Whenever the river's call became too strong, whenever the stones beneath his feet seemed like they were calling out to him, he would close his eyes and listen to the other voice. "You are not the river," it would say. "You are greater than the river. You can be anything you want to be if you learn." And so Nabi fought his battle, not with anger or resentment, but with quiet determination. He would sit in his room after finishing his homework, poring over books, dreaming of the day when he would no longer be called the stupid child or the slow one. He wanted to prove to himself and to everyone else that they were wrong. He wasn't just a kid from the slums who could barely read. He was Nabi, and he could become anything he wanted to be. It was a long and arduous journey, but Nabi was determined to see it through. He knew that the river would always be there, waiting for him to return to its familiar embrace. But now he also knew that he didn't have to listen to the river. He had his own voice, a voice that told him he was more than his circumstances, more than his past. And with each step he took toward his destiny, Nabi felt the river's grip on him weaken. He was no longer the boy who chased stones by the river. He was a student, a learner, a dreamer, and one day he would become all of these things.